They said looking Bianca Vitti in the eye was a death sentence. She was the pristine, untouchable fiancée of Lorenzo Moretti, the capo of the New York underworld, a woman so terrifying that grown men trembled when her heels clicked against the marble floors of Le Bernardin. But fear is a luxury for people who have something to lose. And Maya had $40 in her bank account, a dead-end shift, and 0 patience left. The night the most feared woman in the city tried to break her, Maya didn't flinch. She didn't beg. She just asked if the terrifying Mafia princess needed a sippy cup. And that was the moment the world stopped turning. The air inside the Obsidian Room, a hyper-exclusive supper club in Tribeca, smelled of truffle oil, old money, and fear. The kind of fear that didn't sweat, it just sat heavy in the lungs. Maya adjusted her apron, wincing as the stiff fabric dug into her waist. Her feet throbbed in the cheap black flats she'd bought at a discount store 3 months ago. She was on hour 11 of a double shift. Her rent was late. Her cat needed a vet visit. And she was pretty sure the sous chef was stealing her tips. She didn't have the energy to care about the atmospheric tension in the room. Table 4. The maître d', Henri, hissed, his face pale. The Moretti party. Do not make eye contact with the signorina. Maya took the tray of crystal flutes. Moretti, right. To Henri. Lorenzo Moretti was the devil. To Maya, he was the guy who ordered the 1982 Petrus and tipped well, provided you didn't hover. She walked toward the booth in the back, the one shrouded in shadows and velvet. Lorenzo sat there, a man who looked like he'd been carved out of granite and dressed by Brioni. He was terrifyingly handsome in that way that made you check your exits, sharp jaw, eyes like dark espresso, and a stillness that screamed predator. But tonight, all eyes were on the woman next to him, Bianca Vitti, the Ice Queen. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than Maya's entire life, education, a vintage Versace safety pin gown that clung to her like a second skin. She was toying with a diamond necklace, her manicured nails tapping a rhythmic, impatient beat on the table. Maya set the champagne down. 1996 Dom Perignon, Gold Reserve. Bianca didn't look up. She just stared at the bubbles. I asked for it, chilled to exactly 6 degrees. This feels tepid. It was pulled from the cellar 2 minutes ago. Signorina, Maya said, her voice flat. It's 6 degrees. Bianca slowly turned her head. The movement was reptilian. Her eyes were a piercing, unnatural blue. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Security guards in the corners stiffened. Are you arguing with me? Bianca whispered. The threat in her voice was palpable. Usually, this was the part where the server stammered, apologized, and ran away crying. Maya just blinked. She was tired. So tired. No, Maya said. I'm stating a fact, but if you'd like, I can stick my finger in it to check the temperature for you. Silence. Absolute. Suffocating silence. Lorenzo Moretti, who had been scrolling through something on his phone, stopped. He didn't look up, but his thumb hovered over the screen. Bianca's jaw dropped. Just a fraction. Excuse me, I'm kidding, Maya said, her face completely deadpan. That would be a health code violation. Do you want an ice bucket, or are we going to drink it before it actually does get warm? Bianca stood up. The sound of her chair scraping back was like a gunshot. Do you know who I am? Do you have any idea what I can do to you? I could have you fired. blacklisted, and on the street in 10 minutes. I could have your life ruined just for the sport of it. She leaned in, her expensive perfume Baccarat Rouge 540 cloying and thick. I am a witty. People bleed when I get annoyed. Maya looked at Bianca, really looked at her. She saw the tremble in Bianca's hand, the dilated pupils, the desperate need for validation. Okay, Maya sighed, shifting her weight to her other foot. Look, lady, I make $2.15 an hour plus tips. My feet are bleeding, and I have a shift at a diner in 6 hours. If you're going to have me killed, can you do it before the dessert rush? I'd really appreciate the nap. Lorenzo let out a sound. It was a short, sharp cough, or a laugh. It was hard to tell. Bianca's face turned a violent shade of red. She grabbed her glass of water, sparkling, with 3 slices of cucumber, and in a fit of melodramatic rage, splashed it onto Maya's apron. You are nothing, Bianca hissed. A servant. Clean it up. The cold water soaked through Maya's shirt. It was the last straw. Not the fear, not the threat, but the wet socks. Maya didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She just reached into her apron pocket, pulled out a pristine white napkin, and slowly, methodically, wiped a drop of water off Bianca's nose. You missed a spot, Maya said softly, as if speaking to a toddler who had just spilled apple juice. Big feelings tonight, huh? Maybe we need a snack. The restaurant erupted in hushed gasps. Henry looked like he was having a stroke. Bianca stood frozen, her brain unable to process the lack of terror. She had built her entire identity on being the Mafia's terrifying queen, and this exhausted waitress was treating her like a cranky toddler in a supermarket. Lorenzo stood up. He towered over the table. He was 6'4" of pure intimidation. He turned to Bianca. "Sit down," he said. His voice was low, vibrating with a command that brooked no argument. "Enzo, she insulted me. You're embarrassing yourself," Lorenzo said, his eyes cold. He turned his gaze to Maya. Maya looked up at him. She expected anger. She expected a backhand. Instead, Lorenzo Moretti looked at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a money clip, and dropped a stack of $100 bills onto Maya's wet tray. "For the laundry," he said, "and the nap." "Enzo!" Bianca shrieked. "Leave the bottle," Lorenzo commanded, "and bring another glass, for yourself." "I'm on the clock," Maya said automatically. "Not anymore," Lorenzo replied. "Henri." The maitre d' sprinted over. "Yes, Mr. Moretti." "Fire her," Lorenzo said calmly. Maya's heart sank. "Great, there it is." "And Henri," Lorenzo added, buttoning his suit jacket. "If I find out she works in any other restaurant in this city, I'll burn this building down." He looked back at Maya. "You're coming with me." The drive was silent. The interior of the armored Rolls-Royce Phantom was quieter than a library. Maya sat on the plush leather, smelling the faint scent of leather and gun oil. She wasn't kidnapped? Well, technically she was, but she hadn't fought it. Getting fired by the Moretti family meant you didn't get hired anywhere else. If she was going to die, she might as well see where the rich people lived first. They pulled up to a penthouse building on Park Avenue, the kind with a doorman who wore white gloves and probably knew more secrets than the CIA. The elevator ride up was excruciating. Lorenzo stood in the corner, watching her reflection in the mirrored doors. "You have a death wish?" "Maya?" he asked. It was the first time he'd used her name. He'd read it off her name tag. "I have a fatigue problem," she muttered. And she spilled water on my socks. Wet socks are a war crime. The elevator dinged. The doors opened directly into a living room that was larger than Maya's entire apartment complex. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering expanse of Manhattan. A Modigliani hung casually on the wall next to a coat rack. "Drink." Lorenzo walked to a bar that looked like it belonged in a hotel. "Vodka," Maya said. "Cheap stuff if you have it. My body rejects the top shelf." Lorenzo poured her a glass of grey goose. "You humiliated the daughter of the Vitti crime family in public. Bianca Vitti is known for skinning people's pets." She looked like she needed a nap. Maya shrugged, taking the glass. She downed half of it in one burn. "So, what now? You kill me to restore her honor? Or do I have to clean this place?" Lorenzo leaned against the mahogany bar, crossing his arms. The Patek Philippe on his wrist caught the light. "Bianca is a political necessity. Our families are merging. Her father controls the ports in Jersey. She thinks power is screaming at people until they flinch." He took a step closer. Maya didn't back down, though every instinct in her body screamed danger. "You didn't flinch," he murmured. "Why, I grew up in Hell's Kitchen with 3 brothers and a dad who drank." Maya lied smoothly. It was a rehearsed lie, one she'd used for years. "A princess in a Versace dress doesn't scare me. Poverty scares me." Lorenzo studied her face. He was looking for cracks. "My security team did a background check on you while we were in the car. Maya Lin, 24 years old, high school dropout, no living family. You move apartments every 6 months. You pay everything in cash." Maya gripped her glass tighter. "I like my privacy." "You're a ghost," Lorenzo said, "and ghosts are useful." He walked over to a desk and picked up a black folder. "Bianca is a problem. She's volatile. She draws attention. I need someone to manage her. Or rather, manage the perception of her." "You want me to babysit your psycho fiancé?" Maya laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "No thanks. I'd rather go back to waiting tables." "I'll pay you $10,000 a week," Lorenzo said. Maya choked on her vodka. "What, 10,000 a week, plus room and board here? You will be my executive assistant. Your job is simple. Keep Bianca away from the business. Keep her busy. And when she throws a tantrum, do exactly what you did tonight. Diffuse her. Humiliate her if you have to. Make her feel small so she stops trying to be big." "You hate her," Maya realized. It wasn't a question. "I tolerate her," Lorenzo corrected, "but I need her father's ports. Until the deal is signed in 3 months. She is my burden. Now she is yours." He extended a hand. "Do we have a deal, Maya?" Maya looked at his hand. It was large, calloused, and dangerous. Taking it meant entering a world she had spent 5 years running from. It meant being in the spotlight. It meant he might find her. But 10,000 a week? That was enough to disappear for good. Enough to buy a new identity. A real one this time. She put her glass down. "If she throws water on me again, I'm shaving her head while she sleeps." Lorenzo's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. "I'll hold the razor." Maya shook his hand. His grip was warm, electric. "Welcome to the family." Maya. The first week was a blur of luxury and psychological warfare. Maya was given a suite in the penthouse. Her closet was filled with Saint Laurent suits and Prada heels. Uniforms, Lorenzo called them. She looked less like a waitress and more like a corporate assassin. Her first test came 2 days later. A charity gala at the Met. Bianca was there. Obviously. She was wearing a red dress that looked like a blood stain, clinging to Lorenzo's arm with possessive claws. When she saw Maya standing near the entrance, holding a tablet and wearing a sleek black tuxedo suit, Bianca froze. "What is she doing here?" Bianca screeched, her voice echoing off the Temple of Dendur. Lorenzo didn't even look down. "Maya is my new executive assistant. She handles my schedule. If you want to schedule a dinner with me, you talk to her." Bianca turned on Maya, her eyes blazing. "You think you can work for him? You're trash." Maya checked her tablet, looking bored. "Signorina Witty, you have a wandering strap on your left shoulder. It's ruining the symmetry of your silhouette. Also, your father is watching from the balcony, and he hates it when you screech. Fix your face." Bianca's mouth snapped shut. She looked up at the balcony. Her father, a heavy-set man with eyes like a shark, was indeed watching. He gave a curt nod. Bianca paled. She smoothed her dress and lowered her voice. "This isn't over. I have you penciled in for a tantrum at 10:30 p.m., Maya said, tapping the screen. "Right after the silent auction. Try to keep it under 5 minutes. We have a tight schedule." Lorenzo, standing a few feet away talking to a senator, took a sip of his scotch to hide his smirk. For the next month, this was the dynamic. Bianca would try to exert power. Maya would pop her balloon with aggressive practicality. Bianca ordered obscure, impossible-to-find flowers for a dinner party. Maya replaced them with synthetic ones that looked better and told everyone Bianca was going eco-friendly, making Bianca look like a genius while denying her the satisfaction of being difficult. But amidst the banter and the power plays, Maya noticed things. She noticed that Lorenzo never slept. She noticed the bruises on his knuckles when he came home at 4 a.m. She noticed that for a man who owned the city, he seemed trapped. One rainy Tuesday, Maya was in the kitchen at 2 a.m., making a grilled cheese sandwich. She was wearing an oversized t-shirt and fuzzy socks. Lorenzo walked in. He was bleeding, a nasty gash across his ribs, soaking through his white dress shirt. Maya dropped the spatula. "Sit down." "It's nothing," Lorenzo grunted, swaying slightly. "Sit down." Maya's voice changed. It wasn't the bored waitress voice anymore. It was sharp, authoritative, clinical. Lorenzo sank onto a bar stool. Maya grabbed the first aid kit she'd stashed under the sink old habits and got to work. She cut the shirt open. The wound was deep, a knife slice. "This needs stitches," she said, examining the edges. "I can do it, but it's going to hurt." Lorenzo looked at her, his eyes hazy with pain. "You're a waitress." "I'm an executive assistant," she corrected, threading a needle she'd sterilized with a lighter. "Hold still." Her hands were steady, incredibly steady. She stitched him up with the precision of a surgeon, her movements efficient and practiced. She cleaned the wound, bandaged it, and checked his pupils for concussion. When she finished, she washed her hands and turned back to find Lorenzo watching her. The pain was still there, but the haze was gone. He was looking at her with a new kind of suspicion. "Who taught you to suture like that?" he asked quietly. "That's not diner skills." Maya froze. She'd slipped. She'd gotten comfortable, and she'd slipped. "YouTube tutorials," she said, forcing a smile. "I have a lot of free time." Lorenzo stood up. He winced, but he moved into her personal space, trapping her against the counter. He smelled of rain, copper, and Tom Ford old wood. "Don't lie to me," he whispered. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jaw. You're not just a waitress. You're not just a ghost. Who are you?" Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She looked into his eyes, seeing the darkness there, and for the first time, she felt a pull, not fear, gravity. "I'm the person keeping you alive," she whispered back. The air between them crackled. Lorenzo leaned in, his gaze dropping to her lips. Then, the elevator chimed. Bianca's voice rang out from the hallway. "Enzo, I know you're awake. I saw the lights." Lorenzo pulled back, his mask of indifference sliding back into place. But before he turned away, he grabbed Maya's hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "We're not done with this conversation," he promised. The Hamptons in July was less about relaxation and more about aggressive displays of wealth. The Moretti estate, a sprawling modernist fortress of glass and white stone overlooking the Atlantic, was the stage for the weekend summit. This wasn't a vacation. It was the finalization of the merger between the Moretti and Witty families. Maya stood on the limestone terrace, iPad in hand, watching the catering staff set up for the welcome luncheon. She wore a tailored linen suit in dove grey, her hair pulled back in a severe, no-nonsense bun. "The lobster needs to be deshelled," a voice whined behind her. Maya didn't turn around. "Bianca, it's a clam bake. The aesthetic is rustic elegance. Shells are part of the charm." Bianca stomped into view. She was wearing a bikini that looked like it was made of dental floss and diamonds, covered by a sheer Missoni caftan. "I don't do rustic, and my father is allergic to manual labor. Have them deshelled." Maya tapped her screen. "Your father is currently on the golf course with Lorenzo, smoking a cigar that costs more than my first car. I think he can handle a lobster claw, but fine. I'll have the chef pre-crack them." "Are we done?" Bianca smirked, leaning against the stone railing. She sipped a mimosa. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" "The little stray cat Lorenzo found in the alley. I was in a Michelin-starred restaurant. Actually," Maya corrected, checking the time. "And I think I'm competent. There's a difference. He's sleeping with you, isn't he?" Bianca asked casually. Maya stopped tapping. The air grew still, the sound of the crashing waves suddenly very loud. "Mr. Moretti is my employer. I manage his schedule, his household, and currently his fiancée's dietary restrictions." "Don't lie to me," Bianca hissed, her eyes narrowing. "I see the way he looks at you, like you're water in a desert. It's disgusting. He's a Moretti. He's royalty. You're... help." Maya finally looked at her. "Bianca, if you spent half as much time reading the contracts your father sends over as you do analyzing Lorenzo's gaze, you'd realize that this marriage isn't about love. It's about shipping containers in New Jersey. You're a business asset. I'm an employee. We're both just line items on a spreadsheet." It was harsh, but it was the only language Bianca understood. Bianca laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "You think you know everything, but you have secrets. Maya, I saw the way you stitched him up. I saw your hands. You're not a waitress. And I'm going to find out what you are. And when I do, I'm going to destroy you." She threw her empty glass over the railing. It shattered on the rocks below. "Clean that up," Bianca said, and sashayed away. Maya stared at the broken glass. A shiver of genuine fear went down her spine. Bianca was vapid. Yes, but she had resources. If she started digging into Maya's past. She has a point, you know. Maya spun around. Lorenzo was standing in the open doorway of the living room. He was wearing a polo shirt and golf slacks, looking frustratingly human. He looked tired. About the glass, Maya asked, deflecting. About the way I look at you, Lorenzo said. He walked out onto the terrace. The wind ruffled his dark hair. Maya took a step back. Sir, we have guests arriving in 20 minutes. The Witty capos will be here. Stop, Lorenzo ordered softly. He closed the distance between them. I don't care about the Witty capos. I care about why my executive assistant, who claims to be a high school dropout from Hell's Kitchen, knows how to identify a tension pneumothorax. Maya froze. I never said. I had my doctor look at the stitches you gave me, Lorenzo said, his voice low and dangerous. He said they were military grade, or trauma surgeon grade. He said a waitress didn't do that. He cornered her against the railing. He didn't touch her, but his presence was overwhelming. Who are you? Maya, and don't give me the YouTube tutorial line. Maya looked out at the ocean. She could run. She had a bag packed in her room, hidden in the vent, cash, a burner phone, a fake passport. She could be gone in 10 minutes. But looking at Lorenzo, seeing the raw need and confusion in his eyes, she realized she didn't want to run. For the first time in 5 years, she wanted to stay. My name isn't Maya Lin, she whispered. Lorenzo waited. It's Maya. No, I can't. She shook her head. If I tell you, I'm dead. And you might be too. Lorenzo laughed. A dark, humorless sound. I'm the head of the Moretti crime family. I have an army. Try me. You don't understand, Maya said, tears pricking her eyes. These people, they aren't just mobsters. They're worse. Lorenzo reached out and cupped her face. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Then let me be worse than them. He leaned in. Maya's breath hitched. She closed her eyes, waiting for the kiss she knew shouldn't happen, the kiss that would complicate everything. Lorenzo, my boy. The booming voice of Salvatore Vitti, Bianca's father, shattered the moment. Lorenzo pulled back, his eyes flashing with frustration. He looked at Maya one last time. Tonight, he whispered, meet me in the library at midnight. No more lies. He turned and walked toward the sliding doors, transforming instantly from the vulnerable man into the ruthless Don. Salvatore, how was the back nine? Maya stood alone on the terrace, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had to leave. Tonight. Before midnight. She couldn't tell him the truth, and she couldn't stay and watch him marry Bianca. She turned to go to her room and pack, but stopped, standing in the shadows of the upper balcony, watching her with a phone pressed to her ear. Was Bianca. She was smiling, a cruel, triumphant smile. Bianca mouthed one word to Maya. Gotcha. The dinner was an exercise in torture. Maya stood by the wall, signaling the servers, refilling wine glasses, playing the part of the invisible servant. The table was laden with seafood, the conversation loud and boisterous. Salvatore Vitti was drunk on power and scotch, loud talking about unions and handling problems. Lorenzo sat at the head of the table. Silent. He barely touched his food. His eyes kept darting to Maya, dark and possessive. Bianca was radiant. She was practically vibrating with excitement. She kept checking her phone, texting under the table. I have a surprise, Bianca announced suddenly, tapping her spoon against her glass. The table went quiet. Salvatore beamed at his daughter. What is it? Princess, a new car, a pony. Better, Bianca said. She stood up, smoothing her dress. I felt that since our families are merging, we should have complete transparency. No secrets. Right. Enzo. Lorenzo's hand tightened on his wine glass. Bianca, sit down. Oh, don't be a spoil sport, she giggled. See, I've been feeling like Maya here. She pointed a manicured finger at Maya, who stiffened, has been holding out on us. She's such a good assistant, so talented, so overqualified. The room grew tense. The Witty soldiers stopped eating. The Moretti guards shifted their hands to their holsters. So, Bianca continued, her voice dripping with venom, I made some calls. I sent a photo of our lovely Maya to some friends in high places. And guess what? Someone recognized her. Maya's blood turned to ice. No, it wasn't possible. Bring him in, Bianca chirped. The double doors to the dining room opened. A man walked in. He was in his late 40s, wearing a suit that cost more than the house. He had silver hair, cold grey eyes, and a scar running through his left eyebrow. He walked with a limp Maya remembered giving him. The room gasped. Even Salvatore Vitti looked uneasy. Victor Volkov, Lorenzo said, standing up slowly. The Russian butcher. What are you doing in my house? Victor didn't look at Lorenzo. He looked straight at Maya. A smile spread across his face, revealing gold-capped teeth. I am not here for you, Moretti, Victor said, his Russian accent thick and heavy. I am here for my property. He pointed at Maya. Hello, Dr. Petrova. Victor purred. The name hit the room like a grenade. Lorenzo looked at Maya. Doctor. Petrova. Maya didn't move. She couldn't breathe. Oh, you didn't know. Bianca laughed, clapping her hands. Our little waitress isn't a waitress. She's Dr. Anastasia Petrova, the finest trauma surgeon in Chicago, the angel of mercy, until she killed Victor's brother on the operating table and vanished with $2 million of the Russian mob's money. I didn't steal the money, Maya said. Her voice was steady, though her hands were shaking. And I didn't kill him. I let him die. Silence. Victor took a step forward. You took an oath, Doctor, to do no harm. He was a monster, Maya spat, her mask finally falling. The waitress was gone. In her place stood a woman of steel. He was trafficking children. Victor, I saw the police reports in his pocket while he was under anesthesia. I had a scalpel in my hand. I made a choice. And you violated the code of the underworld, Victor snarled. Doctors are neutral. You crossed the line. I saved 100 lives by letting that one stop, Maya shot back. Enough. Lorenzo slammed his hand on the table. The plates rattled. He looked from Victor to Maya. The betrayal in his eyes was gut-wrenching, not because she was a doctor, but because she hadn't trusted him. She is my employee, Lorenzo said to Victor. She is under my protection. Not anymore, Salvatore Vitti interjected. He stood up, wiping his mouth with a napkin. Lorenzo, this woman is a liability. The Russians are our allies in the pipeline deal. If she killed Volkov's brother, she's a dead woman, walking. You hand her over, or the deal and the peace is off. Bianca smiled. See, Enzo, it's just business. Give her to Victor. Let him take her for a drive. Lorenzo looked at Maya. She stood alone against the wall, surrounded by enemies. Lorenzo, Maya said softly. It's okay. No, Lorenzo said. Enzo, be reasonable, Bianca cried. She's nothing. She's a liar. Lorenzo walked around the table. He moved toward Maya. Victor's bodyguard stepped forward, guns drawn. The Moretti guards leveled their weapons. A standoff. Lorenzo stopped in front of Maya. He looked down at her. "Is it true?" he asked. "Did you take the money?" "I took the money." Maya lied. She had to. If he thought she was just a thief, maybe he'd let her go. Maybe he wouldn't start a war for her. "I took it and ran. I'm just a criminal. Lorenzo, like you." Lorenzo stared at her for a long second. He saw the lie in her eyes. He saw the sacrifice she was trying to make. He turned to Victor. "Get out of my house," Lorenzo said calmly. Victor laughed. Or I kill you where you stand," Lorenzo said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. Maya is not for sale. She is not for trade. And she is certainly not yours. "She killed my brother," Victor roared. "And she saved my life," Lorenzo replied. "So we're even." Salvatore Vitti turned purple. "Lorenzo, you are choosing a waitress, a fugitive over the Vitti family. Over my daughter." Lorenzo turned to Bianca. He looked at her with pure disgust. "You invited a rival warlord into my home," Lorenzo said. "You endangered my family to settle a petty grudge. You are not a wife. Bianca, you are a liability." He ripped the engagement ring off Bianca's finger figuratively, as she wasn't wearing it. But he gestured to the air. "The engagement is off. Get out, all of you." Pandemonium broke out. Victor Volkov pulled a gun. Before he could raise it, a knife flew across the room and embedded itself in his shoulder. Maya stood there, her arm still extended, a steak knife missing from the sideboard. "I missed the artery," she announced clinically. "But if you don't apply pressure, you'll pass out in 40 seconds. Lorenzo drew his weapon and put 2 bullets in Victor's bodyguards before they could blink. The room exploded into chaos. Tables overturned. The Vitti family scrambled for the exits. "Run!" Lorenzo grabbed Maya's hand. They bolted from the dining room, sprinting down the marble hallway as gunfire erupted behind them. "You threw a knife at the head of the Russian mob," Lorenzo shouted as they burst out the back door into the rainy night. "I was aiming for his jugular," Maya yelled back. "I'm out of practice." They reached the garage. Lorenzo threw her into the passenger seat of a vintage Ferrari 250 GTO. He jumped in, hot-wired it in seconds. Another skill that surprised her, and roared the engine to life. As they sped down the driveway, leaving the estate and the chaos behind, Lorenzo glanced at her. "Doctor, Anastasia Petrova," he mused, shifting gears. "A trauma surgeon." Maya slumped in the seat, adrenaline fading, leaving her shaking. "I'm sorry I lied." Lorenzo reached over and took her hand, interlacing their fingers. "Don't be," he said, a grin breaking across his face, a real, reckless grin. "I've always had a thing for doctors." "Where are we going?" Maya asked, watching the headlights cut through the rain. "We have the Russians and the Vittis after us now. We have nowhere." Lorenzo squeezed her hand. "We have a private jet at Teterboro," he said. "And I have a safe house in Lake Como that no one knows about. Not even Bianca." Maya looked at him. "You're giving up your empire." "For me, I can build a new empire," Lorenzo said, looking at her with an intensity that burned. "But I can't build another you." The private jet touched down on a secluded airstrip outside Milan under the cover of a thunderstorm. They didn't speak much during the flight. The weight of what they had left behind and who was chasing them sat heavy in the cabin. Lorenzo's safe house was less of a house and more of a fortress disguised as a paradisiacal retreat. Casa delle Ombre House of Shadows sat perched on a cliff edge overlooking the dark, churning waters of Lake Como. It was accessible only by a winding, single-lane road or by boat. "No staff," Lorenzo said as he unlocked the heavy oak doors. The interior was cold, smelling of dust and lemon polish. I keep it empty. Staff can be bought. Silence cannot. Maya now fully embracing her identity as Anastasia walked into the grand foyer. She shivered, hugging her arms. She was still wearing the linen suit from the Hamptons, now wrinkled and damp. "There are clothes in the master bedroom," Lorenzo said, locking the door behind them and engaging a complex security system. "My mother's old things. They might fit." For 3 days, the world outside ceased to exist. They lived like ghosts in the massive villa. They cooked simple meals, pasta with garlic and oil, bread, wine from the cellar. They didn't turn on the TVs. They didn't use phones. It was in this silence that the dynamic shifted. Lorenzo wasn't the capo here. He was just a man who had lost his kingdom. And Maya wasn't a waitress or a fugitive surgeon. She was the woman who had saved him. On the 3rd night. A storm raged outside, battering the glass windows overlooking the lake. They sat by the fireplace, the only light in the room coming from the crackling logs. "Why did you really save me?" Lorenzo asked. He was pouring wine, his movements stiff. The wound on his side was healing, thanks to Maya's daily care. But it still pained him. Maya watched the flames. "Because you were the first person in 5 years who looked at me." "Looked at you? Really looked at me?" she clarified. "Not at the waitress, not at the uniform. You saw me, even when I was being rude to Bianca. You saw the exhaustion. You saw the anger. Most men just see what they can take. You gave me a napkin." Lorenzo set the bottle down. He walked over to where she sat on the rug and knelt. The firelight danced in his dark eyes. "I saw a queen disguised as a servant," he murmured, "and I knew I was in trouble the moment you asked Bianca if she wanted a sippy cup." He reached out, his hand hovering over her cheek. This time, there was no interruption, no elevator ding, no screaming fiancé. He kissed her. It wasn't a tentative first kiss. It was a collision. It was the release of weeks of tension, fear, and adrenaline. It was desperate and consuming. Maya tangled her hands in his hair, pulling him closer, needing to feel the reality of him. "I will burn the world down before I let them touch you," Lorenzo whispered against her lips. "We don't need to burn the world." Maya breathed, pulling back just an inch. Her eyes were clear, sharp. The surgeon was back. "We just need to cut out the cancer." Lorenzo looked at her, confused. "What Viktor Volkov?" she said. "He thinks he's untouchable because of the pipeline deal. He thinks he has the moral high ground because I killed his brother. But he doesn't know what I kept." Lorenzo sat back. "You kept something. I didn't just let his brother die. Lorenzo, I was the attending surgeon. I had access to his personal effects, his phone, his ledger." Maya's voice dropped. "I made a copy. Digital files, encrypted." "Where is it?" Lorenzo asked, his intensity returning. "In a cloud server. I can access it from anywhere. It proves everything. The trafficking, the bribes to politicians, the names of the judges on his payroll, and the money he was stealing from the Witty family." Lorenzo's eyes widened. "He was stealing from Salvatore. Millions," Maya confirmed, skimming off the top of the joint ventures for years. If Salvatore knew that Victor was robbing him blind, the alliance would shatter. Lorenzo stood up, pacing the room. The gears were turning. "If we can get that proof to Salvatore, the Vitis will turn on the Russians. They'll tear each other apart." "And while they're distracted," Maya finished, standing up to join him, "we take back New York." It was a perfect plan. It was elegant. It was also too late. A low hum vibrated through the floorboards. Lorenzo froze. He held up a hand. "Did you hear that? The storm." "No." Lorenzo moved to the window, peering through the rain-lashed glass. That wasn't thunder. There was a boat engine, a heavy one. He killed the lights in the living room instantly. "They found us," he hissed. "How?" Maya whispered, panic rising in her throat. "The car," Lorenzo cursed. "The vintage Ferrari. It has a classic LoJack system. Old tech, but traceable if you have the codes. Bianca. She gave them the codes." He grabbed Maya's arm. "We have to go. Now. The front door. Too exposed. The wine cellar. There's a tunnel that leads to the boathouse." They ran. As they reached the heavy wooden door of the cellar, the front window of the living room exploded inward. Glass shattered across the floor they had just been standing on. Men in tactical gear rappelled through the broken window. Laser sights cut through the darkness and smoke. "Go!" Lorenzo shoved Maya into the cellar and slammed the door, bolting it. They descended into the damp darkness, Lorenzo using his phone as a flashlight. They could hear the heavy boots of the mercenaries pounding on the floor above. "Lorenzo," Maya gasped as they reached the end of the tunnel. "If they're at the boathouse, then we swim," he said grimly. He kicked open the hatch to the boathouse. It was empty. The boat was gone. They scuttled it, Lorenzo realized, seeing the cut ropes bobbing in the water. They wanted to trap us. Footsteps echoed in the tunnel behind them. They were boxed in. Lorenzo turned to Maya. He pulled a heavy black pistol from his waistband, one he'd retrieved from the safe. He checked the magazine. 7 rounds, he muttered. "There are at least 12 of them." He looked at Maya. "Can you shoot?" "I'm a doctor," she said, her voice shaking. "I fix holes. I don't make them." "Tonight," Lorenzo said, pressing the gun into her hand. "You have to do both. Stay behind the crates. Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." "What are you going to do?" Lorenzo picked up a rusted crowbar from the workbench. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm going to introduce them to the New York style of negotiation." The tunnel door burst open. The fight in the boathouse was brutal, short, and loud. Lorenzo was a whirlwind of violence. He used the darkness and the cramped space to his advantage, taking down the first 2 mercenaries with the crowbar before they could raise their rifles. Maya crouched behind a stack of old fuel drums, the gun heavy and cold in her hands. She saw a shadow move to her left, a mercenary flanking Lorenzo. She didn't think, she just reacted. She raised the gun and pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly dislocated her shoulder. The mercenary screamed and dropped, clutching his leg. She hadn't aimed for a kill shot. She'd aimed for the femoral artery. Surgeon's instinct. "Clear!" Lorenzo shouted, breathing hard. He grabbed a rifle from one of the fallen men. "We need to move. The noise will bring the rest." They scrambled out of the boathouse and onto the rocky shoreline. The rain was torrential, masking their footsteps, but making the rocks slick and treacherous. "Up the cliff," Lorenzo commanded, pointing to a narrow goat path. "There's a road at the top. We can hijack a car." They climbed. It was grueling. Maya's hands were scraped raw, her lungs burning. Every time she slipped, Lorenzo was there, pulling her up, his grip like iron. They reached the top just as a pair of headlights swept across the road. A black SUV. "Get down," Lorenzo whispered, pulling her into the brush. The SUV slowed. The window rolled down. "Lorenzo," a voice called out. Lorenzo stiffened. He aimed the rifle. "It's Rocco," the voice said. Lorenzo hesitated. "Rocco." A heavy-set man with a bald head and a thick mustache stepped out of the car, hands raised. It was Rocco, Lorenzo's oldest friend and the underboss of the Moretti family. "Don't shoot, boss," Rocco said, squinting into the rain. "I came alone." Lorenzo stepped out of the shadows, keeping the rifle trained on Rocco's chest. "How did you find us?" "Bianca." Rocco spat the name like a curse word. "She's bragging to everyone that she sent a hit squad to Como. She's running the family into the ground. Enzo. She's letting the Russians move product through our territories for free. The capos are restless. They want you back. And you?" Lorenzo asked. "Whose side are you on?" Rocco looked at Lorenzo, then at Maya, who was shivering beside him, holding a pistol. "I'm on the side that doesn't let Russians dictate terms in New York." Rocco said, "Get in. We have a plane waiting in Zurich." The return to New York was not a homecoming. It was an infiltration. Rocco hid them in a decommissioned meatpacking plant in the Bronx. The smell was awful, but the security was absolute. "Here's the situation," Rocco explained, laying a map of the city on a rusted table. "Salvatore Vitti has called a commission meeting tonight. The 5 families are gathering at the Vitti estate to formalize the alliance with Volkov. They're going to hand over full control of the ports to the Russians." "Tonight?" Lorenzo asked, rubbing his chin. "That's fast." "Bianca is pushing for it," Rocco said. "She wants to cement her power before you can resurface. She's telling everyone you're dead, that you died in a boating accident in Italy." Lorenzo looked at Maya. If they sign that deal, the Russians own New York, and were dead for real. Maya stepped forward. She placed a flash drive on the table. "Not if they see this," she said. Rocco looked at the drive. "What is it?" "Proof," Lorenzo said, "that Volkov has been stealing from the Vittis for 5 years. If Salvatore sees this, the deal is dead." "But how do we get it to him?" Rocco asked. "The Vitti estate is a fortress tonight. More security than the Pentagon. You can't just walk in." "We don't need to walk in," Maya said, her eyes scanning the blueprints of the estate Rocco had brought. "We need to be invited." "Invited?" Rocco laughed. "Bianca has a shoot-on-sight order for both of you." "Bianca does," Maya agreed. "But what about the catering staff?" She pointed to the service entrance on the blueprint. "I spent 5 years being invisible. Rocco, I know how servers move. I know how they think. Nobody looks at the help. Nobody checks the faces of the people pouring the wine." Lorenzo shook his head. "It's too dangerous." "Maya, if they recognize you—" "They won't," she said firmly, "because I won't look like Dr. Petrova, and I won't look like Maya the waitress. I'll look like a ghost." She turned to Lorenzo. "You said I needed to manage Bianca, that I needed to make her feel small. Well, I'm going to do better than that." "What are you going to do?" Maya smiled, a terrifyingly cold smile. "I'm going to serve her humble pie, literally." The plan was insane. It relied on timing, disguise, and the arrogance of the wealthy. Rocco used his connections to get a team of loyal soldiers into the catering van. Maya was dressed in a standard-issue waiter's tuxedo, her hair dyed a severe black and cut short, wearing thick-rimmed glasses and dental prosthetics that changed the shape of her jaw. She looked like a different person. Lorenzo was disguised as a security guard, part of the external perimeter team that Rocco had bribed. The Vitti estate was glittering with lights. The parking lot was filled with Bentleys and Rolls-Royces. Inside, the air was thick with cigar smoke and tension. The heads of the 5 families sat at a long table. Salvatore Vitti sat at the head, looking smug. Beside him sat Viktor Volkov, looking like a shark that had just smelled blood. Bianca sat next to Viktor, wearing a crown, an actual diamond tiara. She looked ridiculous, but terrifying. "Gentlemen," Salvatore announced, raising a glass, "tonight we make history. The Witty-Volkov alliance will control the eastern seaboard." Maya walked into the room. She carried a silver tray with a single bottle of champagne and a tablet. She kept her head down, her posture subservient. She walked straight to the head of the table. "Champagne, Signor Witty," she mumbled, her voice raspy. "Not now." Salvatore waved her away. "Get out." "It's a gift," Maya said. "From a ghost." She set the tray down, but instead of pouring the wine, she tapped the tablet screen, the massive flat-screen TV on the wall, which had been displaying the Witty family crest. Suddenly flickered, static. Then a spreadsheet appeared. "What is this?" Bianca shrieked. "Turn it off, La." "Wait," Salvatore said, squinting. That's my ledger." The screen changed. It showed bank transfers, wire logs, emails, from V. Volkov to Cayman Islands, Shell Corp subject, skim from Witty Joint Venture. June, amount $4,500,000. The room went dead silent. Salvatore Witty slowly turned his head to look at Viktor Volkov. "You've been stealing from me," Salvatore whispered. Victor's face went pale. "It's a lie, a fabrication. It's Moretti." "Keep reading," Maya's voice rang out. It wasn't raspy anymore. It was clear, commanding. She ripped off the glasses. She pulled out the dental prosthetics. "Maya," Bianca gasped, standing up. "It's Dr. Petrova, actually," Maya said, staring directly at Viktor. "And that email is from the laptop of your brother, Viktor, the one I killed. He kept insurance against you, in case you ever tried to cut him out. Turns out, he didn't trust you either." Viktor lunged for Maya. "You bedo bang." A single shot rang out. Viktor Volkov fell back into his chair, a hole in his shoulder. Lorenzo Moretti stepped out from the shadows of the curtains, a smoking gun in his hand. He was wearing the security uniform, but he looked like the king returning to his throne. "Nobody touches her," Lorenzo said. He walked to the table, flanked by Rocco and 10 loyal soldiers who had just secured the room, disarming the confused Witty guards. Lorenzo looked at Salvatore. "Your partner has been robbing you for 5 years. Sal," Lorenzo said calmly. "And my fiancé." He gestured to Bianca, invited him into our bed. Salvatore looked at the screen, then at Viktor, who was bleeding and cursing in Russian. "Is this true?" Salvatore roared at Viktor. "He's a thief!" Viktor screamed. "Kill him!" "The metadata is authenticated," Maya said coolly. "Check the timestamps. Check your own bank accounts. The money is gone. Salvatore!" Salvatore Witty's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. He looked at Bianca. "You brought him here," Salvatore said to his daughter. "You vouched for him. You said Lorenzo was weak and Viktor was strong." "Daddy, I didn't know," Bianca cried, backing away. "I just wanted to be queen." "You're not a queen," Maya said, stepping forward until she was inches from Bianca's face. "You're just a spoiled brat with a credit card, and you're done." Maya picked up a glass of water from the table. The room held its breath. "You're thirsty, Bianca," Maya said. She poured the water slowly over Bianca's head. It ruined the tiara. It ruined the hair. It ruined the makeup. Bianca stood there, dripping, humiliated, in front of the 5 most powerful men in New York. She opened her mouth to scream, but she saw the look in her father's eyes. It wasn't love. It was shame. She closed her mouth. Lorenzo turned to the commission. "The Volkov alliance is dead," Lorenzo declared. "Victor is mine. The Witty family needs new leadership." He looked at Salvatore. "Step down, Sal, or go down with the Russian." Salvatore looked at the armed men. He looked at the proof of his own stupidity. He looked at his dripping daughter. He slumped in his chair. "He's yours." Lorenzo nodded to Rocco. "Take Mr. Volkov to the warehouse. We have a lot to discuss." Rocco dragged the screaming Russian out of the room. Lorenzo turned to Maya. He offered her his arm. "Ready to go, Doctor." Maya took his arm. She looked at the room full of feared mobsters, none of whom dared to meet her eye. "My shift is over," she said. 3 months later, the New York underworld barely resembled what it once was. The Witty family had vanished into the Moretti Empire. Salvatore Witty lived out his days in guarded luxury in Florida. Volkov was gone, officially a fugitive, unofficially a rumor buried in concrete. Maya stood on the penthouse balcony, city lights glittering below, a glass of vintage champagne in her hand. Behind her, Lorenzo wrapped his arms around her, warm and unguarded in sweatpants. "She's in Omaha now," Maya said softly. "Bianca. New name, new life. Ordinary." Lorenzo chuckled. A fate worse than death for her. Maya smiled, but her thoughts were heavier. She hadn't run. She had stayed attending meetings, shaping alliances, becoming the quiet force beside the Don. "I chose you," she finally confessed, on purpose. "I needed protection. I needed power." Silence followed. Then Lorenzo laughed, low and impressed. "You hunted the devil, and won." He pulled her close, pride shining in his eyes. "You're my queen," he murmured. Maya rested against him, knowing the game had ended, and she had claimed the throne. So, that is the legend of Maya and Lorenzo, a story that reminds us that power isn't about who shouts the loudest or who has the biggest gun. Real power is composure. It's the ability to look a screaming tyrant in the eye and offer them a napkin. Bianca Witty had the name, the money, and the lineage, but she lacked the one thing Maya had in spades: dignity. In the end, the waitress didn't just survive the Mafia, she conquered it, not with bullets, but with wit, surgical precision, and the audacity to treat a king like a man. It makes you wonder, the next time you're rude to a server, are you talking to just a waiter, or are you talking to the person who might just run the world one day? If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and twisted justice, please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching.